So thank you very much, everyone, for being here today, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come and give a keynote. And I really hope that even though this is not exactly about cultural heritage or architecture, that there's something that you can all take away from this experience. And I want to think of extended reality as not just being some sort of shiny new tech, that it is also something that can be a powerful ally in ongoing fight against cybercrime. And to begin, we traditionally do in Australia is acknowledgement of country. So I just want to acknowledge today the Wurundjeri people, the traditional custodians of the land in which I gather on, and I want to extend the respect to the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders people here today as well. I think Michele did a very good job of covering all this, but just to quickly go through it again. I'm a research scientist in human-centric security, and I have a background in quite a range of different things. So that's why a lot of my research is in different areas, so VR, XR, and things like that. But the main common thread through everything is human-computer interaction or human-centric design. And I love new technology, and I'm a huge fan of old school tech. So my first computer was an Apple IIe. I'm not sure how many people that are watching this are familiar with that, but that was where I started my tech journey. So the way that I would like to structure the presentation today is I want to give a general overview of the landscape of cybersecurity and XR, so including games and applications. And I will also give you some examples of projects that I've worked on. And then I will also talk about some of the things we need to consider moving forward. And this will include things like the challenges, as well as some of the considerations of where we could apply XR in the cybersecurity environment. But what I want to start first off is to imagine. Now, think of cybersecurity as allowing someone into your house, right? There's different ways that we do this depending on whether we know the person on the other side of the door or not. So, for example, in Italy, a lot of people are accustomed to hearing that sound on the citofono, and then you answer it, and then you have that choice whether or not you will let that person come up or whether you will go down and meet them. And here in Australia, we have, in some cases, a similar situation, but more often than not, someone will come directly to our back door and they'll knock, and then we have that option again, whether or not to answer or open the door. And we have to think of cybersecurity in very much the same way, why we have very similar processes. The ways that we do those processes vary, and especially culturally or geographically, those things can be and are quite different. So we can't always have this one size fits all approach towards cybersecurity. And, just in the last year, threat actors are evolving tactics for attacks on public and private targets. So in 2023, there were 2,365 cyber attacks affecting over 343 million victims. So when you put them into comparison, it doesn't seem like a lot of attacks, but the amount of people that has impacted and will continue to impact, depending on the type of attack that it was, is quite large. And, still email is still the primary delivery method. You get emails with malware, phishing scams, things like that. So again, very low barrier of entry to attack people. 94% of organizations reported email security incidents. So it's still quite a prevalent thing that is affecting a lot of businesses. And that being said, the information security jobs are projected to grow by 32%. And I think we've seen that also becoming a lot more in action because of, COVID and the post-pandemic, which has changed entirely how we work from home. So because of this, leveraging virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality technologies can really help to enhance cybersecurity education and training and really help to improve these statistics, because we can find different ways to reach people and to help improve their cyber awareness. However, one of the biggest problems is this. So we have MITEX law, and then we also have the diffusion of innovations, which I'll just quickly touch on. And the problem with this is that technology changes at an exponential rate, right? However, organizations change at a logarithmic rate. And while technology changes and the threats change and different approaches towards using that changes, organizations don't keep up. And this is evident, I mean, even in universities, in organizations, they're using old hardware, they might be using old software because they just don't have the funds to keep up with that sort of stuff. And then you also have the other side of the coin where, it's not necessarily about not having enough funds, it's a lack of wanting to adopt new technology or wanting to implement it because for whatever reason, there's not enough skills, the skill set's not there to educate people, or the people aren't there that know how to use this technology. So they'll stick to just what works and what always has worked, which is a problem when it comes to, again, sophisticated attacks. Now, the benefits of using extended reality technology, because it can be a way to supplement and enhance our current education and training, right? And because we might not necessarily be able to adopt the latest technology, or we might not be able to have the money and the funds to educate people about cybersecurity risks, because also in a lot of cases you have those videos where you sit down and you listen and you have someone talking for 2 or 3 hours about how you should be practicing good cyber hygiene or how you should be, monitoring sensitive information. And that a lot of the time sort of just goes over someone's head or through one ear and out the other, because it's not really an interactive experience, a very passive thing. And when you think about cybersecurity, it is a very active thing. When you click on a link in an email, when you put in your login details into an online form, you're actually doing something. And that's where XR has the potential to sort of help improve cybersecurity awareness and cybersecurity education, because you're placing people into a position where they actively have to do something to learn or to demonstrate their knowledge. And because of this, it has the potential to increase both knowledge, attainment, and retention. Just like we learn by doing things, the more you do something, the more repetition you have, the more it's going to stick in your mind and more it becomes a habit. And XR technologies are effective because you can deliver content in a lot of different ways. And I'll show you some of these in a minute. And also it's a lot more enjoyable than sitting at a screen looking at somebody tell you about good cybersecurity behaviors and practices, rather than, being actually able to do something. However, again, on the other side of the coin, we have the benefits, but then also comes the risk. So if we're using XR type of systems, they're constantly gathering data about us, right? And whether you're wanting to have a more tailored or personalized system, which inherently is trying to do the right thing by the end users, trying to align with the way that they're using different things, they're collecting a lot of data on the back end, right? And this could be anything from your personal information to sensitive information that you don't want the other people to know about. And then you have the significance of the data security. So implementing strong encryption, again, this also comes back down to a funding issue. Some companies might want to implement XR experiences, but then they don't have the money to sort of maintain the security side of that as well. And then you have the complexity of XR systems, which can result in security weaknesses, because the way that you design these things, the way that you're collecting information, where is that data stored? Should it be stored locally? Should it be stored in the cloud? Either of them can be fine, but then also either of them can be extremely dangerous if certain security measures are not implemented appropriately. So therefore, we need to build better security measures to regulate updates, to ensure that we have robust security protocols so that we can prevent unauthorized access and then eventually manipulation that results from having that access. That being said, again, too, you also expose yourself to having social engineering attacks, because the more information that some attacker or hacker could gain about somebody is more information they can use to target you specifically or target someone within your organization to then get entry into to a place where they want to and then work their way up accordingly. And then you have the raising awareness and promoting safe practices are crucial for reducing risks related to XR technologies, but we have to also maintain these things. So again, they require a bit of dedication, but at the same time, the benefits are also going to outweigh traditional methods of educating people about cybersecurity. So we have some solutions to addressing cybersecurity knowledge and awareness gap. And one of these was something that I worked on while I was doing my PhD at Sapienza, and it's called Another Week at the Office, and or Awado for short. And it was developed in Unreal Engine 4. And it's quite cool. It has this overarching story where you play as this security analyst that works at Awado Corp. And I know it's not really original for names, but when you got deadlines pressing, you sort of throw originality out the window. And you have 10 characters and 9 locations. And the idea of this experience was to replicate a typical working environment. So again, it comes back to simulating something that people are already familiar with, right? So there are various cybersecurity related events that occur during the player's interaction. And the end goal of this was actually to test out what's traditionally known as a threat modeling framework, but I had reversed engineered it to sort of reflect more on the user's security habits, right? And what doing the wrong thing, like sharing a password on a post-it note, could actually lead to. And this would be things like, spoofing. So if someone got information about or access to your account, then they could pretend to be you. And the next thing, they're getting access, or they're getting documents and files that they shouldn't be actually having access to, and then doing something with that. So the game sort of starts out very simple. It asks you a question. Why are you here? I'm here for a job interview. Who are you? Or I will come back tomorrow. I will come back tomorrow is just like the exit screen for a typical game. I am here for the job interview is what starts the game. And the idea is that we integrated the actual survey questions as part of the game as well, to sort of assess what people knew about cybersecurity practices, as well as sort of how much they knew about the consequences of bad cybersecurity practices. So you start your job interview, you're being interviewed by the CEO, and they're asking you, the generic questions like, like what's your age, the demographic questions you would usually collect, as well as your knowledge. So you can see here, for example, the CEO is asking if you've ever heard of the STRIDE framework before, and you can answer this as this is valued as a Likert scale on the back end, but to the user, it's sort of an option in terms of dialogue. And then once you pass your security interview, which surprise, surprise, everyone does, you get handed the cybersecurity handbook. And this is again supposed to replicate sort of a real life cybersecurity policy handbook. And then once you've done that and you're in theory expected to read it, you get given a pin. And this is like the master pin where you can access all the computers within the environment. And that will make a little bit more sense in a minute when I show you what that is. But again, you can see here, there's like a close-up. You have 2 employees. They're talking in the storage cabinet, so where you have all your boxes and your printer cartridges and all things like that. And then each of these characters also have a profile. So again, you're trying to understand, are these people going to be more susceptible or more likely to share passwords or share access cards? And you have to sort of keep tabs on each of these people. So in a way, you're kind of playing Big Brother. So ethically speaking, this wouldn't really happen in a real life situation. But as far as the game goes, you're practicing and you're implementing your knowledge. So here is an example of the kitchen. And this is also a place where you sort of have to pay a bit more of attention because people are relaxed, they're talking, they say, oh, did you hear about this? You have all the gossip. So you have to try and pay attention to see if people are revealing information that they shouldn't. And this is an example of one of the computers. So as the security analyst, you can actually check on each of the employees' computers to see if they're updating their viruses, if the antivirus, if they're exchanging sensitive information. Here we have the car park as well. And then also to add a little bit more substance to the overall experience, we have a little bit of a story. So for example, you have the daily journal that you can access, or the daily news, and it gives you a little bit of information about what's happening in the corporation. And this also will change depending on the actions you do in the game. So obviously, if you engage in a phishing scam, then that news is not going to be so positive, and vice versa. So here you can see, for example, the security analyst will want to access one of the the user's computers. They put in that master pin from before, and you have different options. So you can check whether or not their antivirus is up to date, what kind of documents that they have on their computer, and you can also check their emails and their trash. Now, if you check their emails, again, you're playing Big Brother. So ethically speaking, this is not realistic, but in the interest of creativity, you can go through their emails and check whether or not what they're saying or what they're discussing with other people is sensitive information or not. And if it's sensitive, then you can report that, and then that will go to another screen where you'll need to classify this later. So this is just an example of updating the antivirus. This is an example of, for example, the Post-it note where, obviously change computer pin 000 is not safe. So you would want to report something like that. This is an example of the trash can, with all the different notes and that they've disposed of. And then this is the security analyst's desktop. So once you've reported or you've classified all the information, once you've reported all the bad emails or the Post-it notes that have sensitive information, you come to this screen to sort of classify them. In addition, you can also listen in on people's conversations. So for example, during the game, you'll hear the phone ring, and then you say, oh, look, these two people are having a chat. Are they talking about things that they shouldn't be? And, should I report this conversation? And you can sort of see here that this is just a very generic one. So you just let that play out, or you can just close it. They're not revealing anything sensitive. And then once you've reported all the issues, they will appear here in this classification framework, and then you can just classify them accordingly. So again, based on the STRIDE framework, but then based on what could potentially lead to that. So for example, if someone wrote a computer pin on a Post-it note, then that could be just a matter of norms or complacency in the workplace. And the outcomes of having something like that could be, again, spoofing or denial of access or elevation of privilege. So then you would classify these things accordingly. And then at the end of each day, from Monday to Friday, you get the daily report of how many threats that you've discovered, how many threats you've prevented, and how many threats you've incorrectly classified. And as by the end of the game, you sort of get the idea, and then you sort of get a report saying, well, you could have done better, and these were the areas you need to improve, and these are the things you need to review. So this was kind of a learning experience that sort of helped explain that. The next project was actually a project that I worked with on a master's student who now is a doctor, so Dr. Silvestre Veneruso, and he is from also Sapienza, he's from DIAG. And he developed a Cyber VR, which is a virtual reality game designed to enhance user awareness of cybersecurity issues. And this, the results revealed that Cyber VR is actually as effective as a traditional textbook learning for cybersecurity education, but it offers a much more engaging experience. So you start off by doing Nmap scanning, and Nmap scanning is just a way to sort of look on the surface level of a system to sort of introduce you to the concept of performing a scan in the terminal command. And it's just to sort of get you familiar with the controls. So especially in VR, you're using your hands. So it's sort of getting the user familiar with that. And then as you enter the space, there's a lot of different things that you get exposed to, and they're cybersecurity concepts. So here you can see we have public key cryptography and dynamic software analysis. So in each of these mini games, you have an objective. So for example, with the public key cryptography, the player will play as Alice and Bob. So they're exchanging messages securely using a private key. And the player has to encrypt the message with a shared public key and then decrypt them with a private key. So you have that whole process explained to the user. And the same thing, for example, with the dynamic software analysis, where it tests software behavior during runtime. So players start by pressing the run code button, which is this little green button at the bottom, and they can reveal security issues. So it's a bit like whack-a-mole. So you have these things that sort of pop up, and then you have to push them down if they're going to be something that's going to cause an issue. And then naturally, the amount of issues that you correctly guess get logged. And then you have privileged escalation, information flow. And again, these are similar, very short mini games that sort of help to, again, reinforce different cybersecurity concepts. So the system to be secured must have intruders, shouldn't have intruders inside of it. So you want to try and prevent them from getting into the environment itself. So obviously in this, you want to try and fix bugs. You want to try and remove privileges to unauthorized people and eventually have it so that the only people in your system are those that should be. And then with information flow, it requires the player to scan data packets, which are represented by these sort of cubes. And then you can classify them as public or sensitive in that way. Patch management and code injection. So here, this is again another mini game where the idea is to keep the software in the system updated and patched, which is actually it's a vital security measure, and players have to scan all the layers of the cube and apply the correct patches accordingly. And then the same thing or similar thing here with the code injection, it represents an attack. It consists of injecting malicious pieces of code that are then executed by a trusted application. And in this way, it's a very metaphorical thing. You have to use the flamey tool to sort of try and get rid of all the dangerous things of a system. But again, the takeaway is even though it's metaphorical, you understand the concept of what you should be doing to try and remove the danger or the threat from a system. And this then moving on from VR and sort of game-based, we have what's called corporates compromised, but the hybrid version. So basically, this was traditionally a board game, and we only ever had it in a physical setting. And it consists of 10 senior leaders. So traditionally, you would have this being played with CISOs or like chief information security officers or chief technical officers within an organization. But also because the issue was within those different hierarchies, not everyone knew the right security policies, or maybe they didn't understand the right ways or the right things that they should be doing. So the idea of this game was actually to get people talking about cybersecurity. But the issue was, again, it was only a physical board game, and we wanted to bring it into a digital realm. So we wanted to have it as a hybrid experience. So it features 6 key areas. You have your core systems, so your corporate system, your operation systems, your communication systems. And then as you progress through each of these game rounds, you get introduced to sort of a new piece of information through a news report. So we had like these pre-recorded news reports, and they say, "Oh my goodness, the port has been attacked, or the bank has been hacked, or something like that." And you as a team have to develop strategies accordingly to try and mitigate the consequences of that. So whether or not you had a good cybersecurity strategy in place, or whether or not you manage the risks well. And a typical game environment gameplay takes about 60 minutes. But again, we wanted to bring this to a hybrid setting. So what we did is we looked at a lot of different technology. We started off with what we first had within our environment, and then we sort of moved towards a bit more hardware. So you can see here we have a 360 camera to try and capture the participants around the game board. And then we wanted to have like a physical presence of the people online. So we had them on actual iPads in the environment. And then we developed a digital version of the board in a program called Excalidraw. And this is a digital twin. So whatever happens in the physical board, there'll be 2 facilitators. The online facilitator will then replicate that into the digital board, and then whatever happens with the online participants will then get replicated into the physical board. And it is a little bit old school, like, because we wanted to still have that sort of, we didn't want to have it all online, and we definitely didn't want to have it all offline. But this was a good example of utilizing different types of technology to sort of bring those 2 together. And we've tested this several times, and it's worked out quite well. And then we have CyberBuddy, and this is the last project that I'll show today. So CyberBuddy is a application designed to help individuals and small businesses to sort of improve their cybersecurity posture. And it sort of takes a do something approach to cyber upliftment. So we want to try and, again, get people back into, a situation where they're actively engaging with the technology itself rather than just reading a textbook or watching a video. And the issue here is because in Australia, we have a lot of small businesses which have less than $10 million of turnover a year. And they have less than 20 employees. So again, they're not going to have these cybersecurity experts that are going to be looking out for them. So a lot of the onus is going to fall back on them to manage the cybersecurity risks. And because of that, they are a big target. So they're always going to be, even though they're low-hanging fruit, they're going to be the ones that are going to be attacked a lot more because, again, they don't have that infrastructure in place to protect them. So we developed this application to try and sort of bridge that gap. So it gives them the knowledge and gives them the idea of how they can manage their cybersecurity knowledge and sort of test them on that. So there's a series of different quizzes, and these quizzes, think of it a bit like Duolingo, where you get to test your knowledge, and then each time that you test it, you unlock another level, and then you move up, and then you sort of start learning more about advanced features. So you start here with multi-factor authentication, and then you move to sort of patch management, patching operating systems, and things like that. And I know that's sort of a quick run through, but I can see that I'm starting to run out of time here. But where are we going here from here? I think it's really important that we acknowledge XR in cybersecurity because it's not just necessary for everything, but I think that there's a lot of benefits that right now we can use towards education and training. And again, coming back to, for example, CyberBuddy, where these organizations are going to be most at risk because they don't have that infrastructure in place to protect the employees, let alone the knowledge or the data. Because again, even to hire external people, that is going to cost a lot of money. So by implementing XR as a method of education and training, it's really going to help people or put people in a situation where they can practice in a consequence-free environment and apply that knowledge. And it's going to also engage them a lot better than having, for example, a textbook to read or a video to watch. It provides an easy to update option for contemporary cybersecurity training. So again, coming back to, traditional methods, if you have videos or you have textbook material, you need to either rewrite all that stuff or you need to re-record all those videos. And with XR experiences, modifications can be quite simple, not in all cases, but in a lot of the cases, you can update those things with contemporary information that reflects things that are happening in the cybersecurity landscape, like new attacks or new methods of authentication or new ways to protect yourselves. So these can really fill in the gap between changes and the slow adoptions of technology. So what we we're talking about before, where there's that really big gap between new technology adoption and organizations then adopting it. And then you have that difference in between people wanting to adopt it and then people adopting it later on once it's become a little bit more tested. And extended reality can provide experiences that can adapt to different cultures and threat landscapes. So again, like the Chitophano example, right? No one size fits all. It has to be adaptable and it has to take into consideration different cultures, different perspectives, different practices in cybersecurity. Because again, what we practice as norms here in Australia is going to be very different to what is acceptable in Italy or is going to be acceptable in Spain, right? So you have to take those things into consideration. And they can be bespoke, so they can be personalized, tailored to the organization as well. So if they have a particular need that needs to be focused on more than others, then XR can definitely address that issue. So with that said, I would like to thank you very much for your attention and feel free to get in touch. You can reach me there. That's my email, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name and I think I'm pop up straight away. So.